Hey, you. Ever feel like you're being pulled in a million different directions?
Like you're trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah, it can be exhausting. So today we're taking a deep dive into uncovering your authentic self.
We'll explore how to break free from those expectations and embrace who you truly are.
And get this, we've got some awesome sources for this one. We're talking ancient Stoic philosophy.
Wisdom from samurai.
Even some modern day stories. And you know what? They all point to a more fulfilling way to live.
Absolutely. It's like we often think strength comes from outside sources, achievements, possessions, other people's opinions.
Right. But what if true strength,
Real strength,
comes from within?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to explore today. We'll unpack how letting go of that constant need for approval,
Always needing everyone to like you.
it can actually lead to incredible personal growth. Not just that, but stronger relationships too.
And get this, our sources even say it can boost your productivity. It's like so many people struggle with this. There's this pressure to always be nice.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Always saying yes, putting others first, which on the surface sounds pretty good, right?
It's like, who doesn't want to be seen as nice?
Right. But our sources point to some serious pitfalls with this. Like, one source tells the story about Alex.
Oh, what about Alex?
So Alex is the go-to guy, always helping everyone out, always saying yes. But it turns out it's wearing him down. Big time.
It's a classic case of what happens when we don't set healthy boundaries. And this isn't some new agey concept. Philosophers like Aristotle were talking about this centuries ago.
Whoa, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Even modern psychology backs this up. Being truly kind to others. It means being kind to yourself, too. You got to set limits so you don't burn out.
So true. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Our sources actually use this term, societal niceness.
Societal niceness.
Yeah. It's like this unspoken pressure to be agreeable all the time, even if it means squashing your own needs and desires.
It's like wearing a mask, pretending to be someone you're not, just to please others. And honestly, it's exhausting.
So exhausting. And it prevents us from forming those real, genuine connections. The kind that come from being your authentic self.
Exactly. If you're not being true to yourself, how can you expect others to connect with the real you?
So how do we break free from that? Well, one of our sources dives into this ancient philosophy called Stoicism.
The Stoics. I love the Stoics.
Might sound a little intimidating at first.
Oh, yeah. Definitely not the most inviting name.
But it's actually super practical. Think of it like a mental toolkit for handling anything life throws your way.
I like that. A mental toolkit.
They even had these techniques like morning reflection.
What's that?
Basically, it's just taking some time to prep your mind for the day ahead.
Oh, that makes sense.
The Stoics, they were onto something.
Yeah, these philosophers from ancient Greece and Rome, they really understood that the only thing we can truly control in life is our own reactions.
Which is honestly such a freeing realization when you think about it.
It is. So instead of getting all worked up about things outside of your control, you focus on what you can influence.
What you can change.
Yeah. Like if something bad happens, instead of immediately going to that, why me?
Yeah.
You ask, what can I learn from this?
It's about reframing challenges into opportunities for growth.
I love that.
So instead of focusing on things like other people's opinions, which, let's be real, we can't control.
Nope.
We focus on our own effort, our attitude.
The things we can control.
Right. And what's funny? A lot of the stuff we stress about is totally completely outside of our control.
It's true. We give so much power to things that we have absolutely no control over.
So the Stoics are all about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to situations.
And that doesn't mean you become this cold, uncaring person.
No.
It's about being selective with your energy. Being thoughtful about where you invest your attention.
I like that.
They even have a phrase for it.
Oh, yeah.
Selective indifference.
So we've heard from the ancient Greeks.
Always a good place to start, right?
But get this, we also have a 17th century samurai we're going to learn from today.
Oh, wow. Okay, who's that?
This guy named Miyamoto Musashi.
Miyamoto Musashi, okay.
He wrote this book called The Dokodo.
What does that mean?
It translates to The Path of Walking Alone.
The Path of Walking Alone. I like that. Sounds intriguing.
And it's shockingly relevant even now, all these centuries later.
That's so cool. What does he say?
Well, Musashi, just like the Stoics, he also emphasized self-mastery.
Self-mastery, okay.
It's about aligning your life with your own WN values.
Not with what society dictates.
Exactly.
Oh, I like him already.
So he wasn't advocating for, like, actual solitude, literally becoming a hermit and living in a cave.
Okay, so not literally walking alone.
Right. He was talking about a kind of inner independence.
Inner independence.
Like not being overly attached to what others think of you.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is tough, but so important for living an authentic life, right? Yeah, that whole not caring what other people think thing.
It's a process, right?
Totally. It's like we're programmed to want approval, to fit in.
It's like that from the moment we're born.
Right. So how do we break free from that?
Well, one thing Musashi talks about is detaching.
Like detaching from what other people think?
Yeah, and detaching from desires in general.
Like wanting less.
It's kind of a radical concept in our modern world, isn't it?
Totally. We're always being told to want more, buy more, be more.
But what if real freedom comes from wanting less?
It's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is, it is.
But like we were talking about earlier, what about the fear of judgment? Like I know for me, that's a big one. Holding myself back because I'm worried about what other people might think.
Yeah, that fear is so real.
And our sources are full of stories just like that. People letting that fear hold them back from really going for it.
It's so common though, isn't it? Like it's almost like we're wired to avoid putting ourselves out there too much.
Totally. But then we're also told to just go for it. Don't be afraid to fail. Easier said than done.
Right. Well, this is where the Stoics and Musashi, they actually have some really similar perspectives.
Oh, yeah. What do they say?
They both talk about this idea of embracing challenges.
So not shying away from the things that scare us.
Exactly. Seeing those obstacles as opportunities for growth.
Like leaning into the discomfort. I can see how that could be a good thing.
It is. Because honestly, the more we do something, the easier it gets, right? Like the more we practice facing our fears, the less power they have over us.
So true. Our sources even talk about how the more we can actually reframe those challenges as opportunities for learning and growth, the less that fear will hold us back.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can make a huge difference.
One story that really stuck with me was about this software developer named Sarah. She was amazing at her job, had all these incredible ideas.
Oh, wow. What happened to her?
But she was terrified to share them, like really terrified.
Oh, how was that?
Well, she had been shut down pretty harshly in the past, and it really shook her confidence.
Yeah, I can totally see how that would happen. It just sucks that someone's negativity can have such a lasting impact.
Right. It's like we internalize those experiences, and then we end up holding ourselves back.
Totally. So what happened with Sarah? Did she end up sharing her ideas?
She did, but it wasn't easy. So her company started this new project, and Sarah, she had this idea that was like a perfect fit.
It was her moment.
It was. But she almost let that fear get in the way.
I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happened next?
Okay, so she had this new team leader, and he was amazing.
Oh, I love a good leader story.
He basically normalized failure. Like, he talked openly about his own failures and how those experiences actually led to his biggest successes.
See, I feel like we don't do that enough. Like we're so afraid to admit when we mess up or when things don't go according to plan.
I know, it's like we're supposed to pretend that we have it all figured out.
But then we miss out on all those valuable lessons that come from messing up.
It's so true. And this is something that our sources emphasize over and over again, this idea that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the process.
Ooh, I like that. Failure is part of the process.
It really is. Like, when we can embrace that, it's incredibly empowering.
So what happened with Sarah? Did she share her idea?
So Sarah, she's so inspired by her team leader's honesty, she decides to go for it.
Yes, finally.
And guess what?
Tell me it was amazing.
It was. Her idea ended up being crucial for the project.
I love that. It just goes to show how much we stand to lose when we let that fear hold us back.
I know. And it's not just in our careers either. It's like, think of all the missed connections.
Missed opportunities.
All the amazing ideas that never see the light of day because someone's too worried about what other people might think.
It's true. It's like we're all walking around holding back these amazing parts of ourselves.
And it's not just about the fear of failure either. It's the fear of judgment.
Oh, totally. Like, what if people don't like it? What if they think I'm not good enough?
All those insecurities.
Exactly. And here's the thing. A lot of the time, the people who are judging, they're wrestling with their own insecurities and fears.
Ooh, interesting.
Right. It's not really about you at all. most of the time.
It's like projecting their own stuff onto other people.
Exactly. And you know what? Just realizing that can be incredibly freeing.
Oh, totally. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't even about me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it helps us detach from that need for everyone to approve of us all the time.
Which is exhausting.
The best thing we can do.
Yeah.
Focus on what we can control, our own thoughts, our own actions.
So we've talked about breaking free from expectations, embracing our true selves, and not letting fear hold us back.
It's a lot, right?
It is. And it all ties into this bigger idea of self-worth. Like, how do we cultivate a strong sense of self-worth that isn't dependent on all those external factors?
It's like that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. Because when we're constantly seeking validation from others, we're essentially giving them the power to determine our worth.
Oh, that's such a good point. And we all know how unstable that can be.
It's like putting your self-esteem on a roller coaster. You're up when people are praising you and down when they're critical.
Ugh, talk about exhausting.
Right. And one of our sources talks about how this constant need for validation can actually lead to burnout. It can prevent us from stepping into our full potential.
Oh, absolutely. If you're so worried about pleasing everyone else, you're never going to have the time or energy to really go after what you want.
So true. One story that really illustrates this is about this high school student, Alex.
Okay, what about Alex?
So Alex, he was like the epitome of success. Top of his class, star athlete, you name it.
Oh, wow, Mr. Popular.
Right. But here's the thing. His whole sense of self-worth, it was totally dependent on those external achievements.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's like he built his sense of self on a foundation of sand.
It's the perfect analogy. Looks solid as long as the weather's good.
But any little storm could wash it all away.
And that's kind of what happened to Alex. So he hit some roadblocks in his senior year, some academic setbacks, a few sports injuries.
Ah, the pressure of it all.
Right. And suddenly those accolades that he'd built his whole identity around, they weren't coming so easily.
Oof, I bet that was tough for him.
It really was. His self-esteem totally plummeted. He felt lost, like his whole world was crumbling around him.
That's heartbreaking. But you know, it's something that I think a lot of people can relate to.
It's so true. It just shows how important it is to have that strong sense of self that isn't dependent on those external factors.
Which, let's be real, are totally out of our control.
Exactly. So how do we do that? How do we build that unshakable sense of self-worth?
That's where the Stoic perspective can be really helpful, actually.
Yeah, how so?
They were all about focusing on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your reactions, and letting go of the rest.
That selective indifference again.
Exactly. And they believe that true worth, it comes from aligning your actions with your values. It's not about being perfect.
It's about the effort.
Yes. It's about striving to be the best version of yourself, regardless of the outcome.
So we should focus on the process, not the outcome.
Exactly. It's not about chasing those external rewards, those pats on the back. It's about finding that inner contentment.
Like that inner peace.
Yes. And you know what's interesting? That kind of inner peace and stability, it can actually make you more productive.
Really? I would have thought the opposite.
It makes sense if you think about it. When you're not constantly second-guessing yourself or worrying about what everyone else thinks, you're free to take risks.
To experiment, to really let loose.
Exactly. You can let your true brilliance shine through. And one story from our research really highlights this.
Oh, yeah. What's the story?
It's about this graphic designer, Maya.
Okay. What about Maya?
Super talented, but really sensitive to criticism.
Oh, I know those types of creative people. They pour their heart and soul into their work, and then the slightest bit of negative feedback just crushes them.
Which is understandable, right? Like, if you're putting so much of yourself out there, it's natural to want people to like it.
Totally. But it can also be paralyzing.
It can. And for Maya, it was definitely holding her back.
So what changed for her?
Well, she had this really tough experience with a client.
Oh, no. What happened?
The project went sideways. The client was really harsh with their criticism.
The dreaded client from hell.
Right. And Maya, bless her heart, she took it really hard.
I can imagine.
But you know what? It ended up being a turning point for her.
Really? How so?
It forced her to confront that fear of judgment head on. And through that process, she discovered all these new tools and techniques for dealing with criticism in a healthier way.
Like what kinds of tools?
Well, she started exploring mindfulness and meditation as a way to manage the stress and anxiety.
Mindfulness. That's so interesting.
It is. And through her meditation practice, she came across some Buddhist teachings about detachment.
Detachment? That sounds kind of stoic.
It totally is. And it was a light bulb moment for Maya. She realized that she didn't have to be ruled by her emotions.
that she had a choice.
Exactly. And, this whole idea of choice, it connects back to what we were talking about earlier with the Stoics and that selective indifference. It's not about being cold or uncaring. It's about being intentional about what we allow to affect us.
Choosing your battles, basically.
Yes. And it makes me think of that quote, you can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf.
I love that. It's like life is going to throw us curveballs. We can't control that, but we can control how we react.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important aspect of living authentically, the power of cultivating authentic relationships.
Oh, interesting. Because when you can show up as your true self without the need to please or pretend, it creates a whole new level of connection and intimacy, right?
Exactly. There's this story in our research about a woman named Jessica. She spent years trying to fit in, always changing her personality, her interests.
Oh, I know people like that. Like a chameleon, always trying to blend in.
Exactly. And she was exhausted. None of those relationships felt truly fulfilling because they weren't based on who she really was.
It's like, how can you build a genuine connection with someone if you're not even being yourself?
Right. And then Jessica had this experience that totally changed her perspective.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
She went on this retreat, and the whole focus was on vulnerability and authenticity. Everyone was encouraged to let their guard down and just be themselves.
Wow, that sounds scary, but also amazing.
It was both. And at first, Jessica was terrified to really open up. But then she decided to go for it. And you know what? It was a revelation for her.
I bet. She probably felt so seen and understood.
She did. And it wasn't just about her own experience either. She realized that when she was being authentic, it gave other people permission to do the same.
It's like that saying, people might not remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Oh, I love that. And it's so true. When you're being authentic, when you're being true to yourself, it makes other people feel safe to do the same.
It creates this beautiful ripple effect.
It does.
So, wow, we covered so much ground in this deep dive. Ancient philosophy, samurai wisdom, self-worth, authenticity, genuine connection.
It's a lot to digest, right?
It is, but it's all connected, and it all points to this idea that true fulfillment, true happiness, it comes from within.
Absolutely. When you can embrace who you truly are, flaws and all, and let go of that need for external validation, that's when the magic happens.
It's like you give yourself permission to just be you.
Exactly. And that's a really powerful thing.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with?
You are worthy, just as you are. Don't be afraid to shine.
Love that. It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
As always, it was fun.
Until next time.